We've looked at the Fatihah, haven't we? Do you remember I spoke about in the last chapter, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and I said it's a noun sentence. Do you remember? And I said, why is it a noun sentence and not a verb sentence? Because Allah could have said, praise Allah. I spoke about this, didn't I? Praise Allah, but He said praise is for Allah. He says it's a noun sentence. And we said noun sentences, what do they express? They're emphatic. And they're permanent as well. They have a sense of permanence. Nouns, we said, for example, I say Elias. I've got an idea of him, haven't I? There's a sense of permanence there. But an action, a verb, for an action to exist, it needs a subject. It needs someone doing it. So here I'm writing. But the moment I put the pen down, am I writing anymore? No. So, and if I'm writing, imagine the arm just disappears. I disappear out of reality. Okay, and all you see, will the pen continue writing? No, because you need a subject for a verb to continue. Does that make sense? Verbs are impermanent. They're constantly coming in and out of being. This is an important concept. So, and if we want to get really deep, we're all actions because Allah created us. We're an act of God. Does that make sense? So we have an element of impermanence. If Allah disappeared from the picture, obviously it won't happen, but if Allah disappeared, would the existence continue being? It would disappear like an action. So that shows that Allah's constantly creating us. Like a flick, you know, they know this in quantum physics now, or if that's the right science, is that basically at every moment it's a new moment. You know, like a flick book, you flip it and it feels like it's a continuous motion, isn't it? But in reality it's just stationary images. They're all separate. If you take some film, you're watching a movie, but then you get the film, you realise that a movie is just all different images, isn't it? They're all separate. So that shows us that for us to continue, every second that's happening, Allah has to intervene to create. He's bringing these things into existence. So the past is not the past anymore. It doesn't exist. Our mind feels it does, and that's why we hold on to the past and we feel that thing affected me. In reality, if you think about it from a metaphysical point of view, it doesn't exist anymore. Why is it having an impact on you? Because you remember it. Does that make sense? So all suffering really comes from holding on to what's not, which is a very Buddhist principle as well. Okay? But this is true. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay? Now this is important to appreciate this surah, Fatihah, because Allah says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise is for Allah. I didn't use a verb. Praise is for Allah. It has permanence. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. What's the next bit? Ar-Rahman Nir-Rahim. Yeah? What's the next bit? Maliki Yawmiddin. Now these aren't sentences. They're verses, yes. But they're just clarifying who Allah is. Praise be to Allah. Who's Allah? He's the Lord of the worlds. And He's the most. And we went into all this, like what's the difference between the two? And His Day of Judgment. The Fatihah, a lot of the aspects of the Fatihah is bringing two paradoxes together. Okay? Because who is He? He's Lord of the worlds. Now Lord, we could take it two ways. Lord, in that's scary, He's my Lord. You know, power. But it could also be He's nurturing. So you could look at it as from a jalali, like majestic sort of point of view, scary. Or you could look at it from a beautiful perspective, couldn't you, Rabb? So then He divides it, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. First, because my mercy, my compassion overrides my anger. Are you familiar with the hadith? That Allah's mercy overrides His. So He mentions mercy first, or compassion. And then He says, Malik Yawmiddin. Yes, I'm merciful, yes, I'm kind, but don't take the mickey, guys. Basically, because if you take the mickey, you'll be taken to task for it. And so it's in our attitude. That's, you know, people say, well, Allah forgives, that sort of attitude. They have to be careful, because that sort of nonchalant attitude, like whatever, that's what gets you into trouble in life. Because it always comes and bites you on the backside, that one. Okay, when you just think nothing's going to happen and all this, guess what happens? Something happens in life, yeah? When you just basically become blasé about life, your life falls apart. You take it for granted, basically. So you have to be aware in your life. So these verses are all describing Allah. Notice, that these are all noun, well, they're not noun sentences, they come from the noun sentence. They're just clarifying who Allah is. So that's all permanence. Notice also what's so strange about this first part of the Fatihah is Allah is talking to us and we're speaking it back to Him in the third person. Really weird. Do you know what first, second, third person? So first person is what? I. That's easy to remember. Who's number one? Me! Okay, I. What's second person? You. To you. So I'm saying I'm speaking to you in the second person. You, Ilyas, bloody blah. What's third person? He, she, it, they. Who you having a good chin wag behind their back about? That's third person. So here Allah's speaking in the third person. He's saying, praise be to Allah. Why is He not saying praise be to me? Is that clear? Does it make sense? It's like I come into the room and say, Idris is here. Okay? You'll think, hey, who do you think you are? Because for a human to do that, it's sort of arrogant, isn't it? But what's the play here? It's to say Allah is far from our minds. We can't conceive Him. He's third person, as if He's not present when we try to really perceive who Allah is. He's transcendent. Yeah? Because the mind can never conceive God fully. He can come to some appreciation by meditating on His beauty, the majestic attributes in the world, seeing compassion, seeing power. We realise who Allah is, and we feel Him as well. But we can never truly fathom Allah fully because He's uncreated. Okay? And so Allah in the Quran uses the third person to allude to this. You can't truly fathom Allah. But when can you... Now, this is the powerful bit now. You ready? What's the next verse? Iyaka. What? Iyaka. What's this translate as? You alone we worship. It's moved, it's shifted from third person. He, praise be to Him, Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And now, you alone we worship and you alone we ask for. Now Allah is speaking in the second person. Because we're saying you, Allah. You we worship. Meaning, when we acknowledge who we are, we experience Allah. We will have a personal relationship with Allah. We will speak to Him directly and feel Him directly. When we're acknowledging what? That we are? We are slaves to Him. It literally means you alone we express our slavehood to. I.e. that we need you. Okay? No one likes to be called slaves these days. Okay? Slave, I'm not a slave. But it had practical ramifications because it meant you actually had empathy for people below you. Because in the old days, there were slaves. So if you as a king say, I'm a slave too, you're empathizing with people below you. So it had a very practical function if you think about it. Today though, no, I'm not a slave, I'm wonderful. Yeah? And I can do anything I want to. This is the sort of rhetoric now, isn't it? Not realizing, alhamdulillah, I have to humble myself a bit. So you alone we worship, and we do acts for you, Allah. But also you alone we, ask for help. This is very powerful. Is it a verb sentence or a noun sentence? Verb. We worship. We ask for help. Allah shifted it from a noun sentence to a verb sentence to say there's an element of impermanence to your worship, so you've got to continue it. It's not like, I worship, I've done my prayer, mashallah, I've done my prayer, that's it. It's like, because verbs are impermanent, you've got to keep them up, or they just evaporate and come into nothing. Women understand this. On the wedding day, I'm stereotyping here, but on the wedding day, he puts the ring on her finger and says, love, I'm going to say it, and you're going to accept it, and then I never have to say it again, because I've said it and you should always believe it. I love you. Done. I don't have to repeat myself, do I? Would that work with any woman? You've got to continuously tell her, darling, I love, because she recognises the impermanence of things. Because you loved me then in that moment, but that's gone that moment. Do you still love me now? And then 5 minutes later, obviously this is an extreme version of that, but now do you love me? He said, well, I said it 5 minutes ago. 5 minutes is gone. Do you see what the point? The impermanence of verbs. The impermanence of verbs. They constantly come in and out. So once they've gone, they've gone. So Allah is saying you've got to keep up your worship. It's not something you can just think and that's going to be very important for the next verse. So you alone we worship, you alone we ask for help. This is a paradox. Because we're saying we are worshipping you, but we can't worship you without your help. So in reality, Allah does everything. And you say, that's a paradox, that doesn't make sense. That's the most powerful thing in life, when you realize two things that are opposites come together. So in the first one, Allah is all merciful, but He's also Malik. That's a paradox. You're either one or the other. Are you going to take me to task, or are you going to be merciful? Both. Huh? And one of the most beautiful examples I've reckoned that really personifies this is, I don't know the strength of this hadith, but it's very beautiful. Dawood says, Allah, how can I thank you when the inspiration to thank you came from you? So I have to thank you for that you inspired me to thank you. Make sense? When I'm thanking you, you're the very one that inspired me to thank you, so how can I thank you? Because you're the one that gave me the means to thank. And then God said, now you thank me. Once you realize that you can't thank me. When you recognize the paradox, the two things that are opposites, but then you experience God. So you recognize I have to work, but you realize really nothing is there except from Allah. And you just say, I can't make sense of that. When you let go of your mind and realize, then you experience God. And that's implied in the first verses. Who is God? And you're trying to think. You've just got to submit to Him and you feed Him. So it's not an intellectual exercise. That has a play, I'm not dismissing that, but fundamentally you have to submit and experience. It's like, what's a strawberry? Put it in your gob, there you go, taste it, now you know what it is. No, I want to understand what it is before I eat it. You have to experience it. Make sense? So this is the power of why does Allah use sometimes verb sentences and why He uses. And we've got now the next one, and then we'll stop on this. What's the next verse? Ihdinas Musta. Verb sentence or noun sentence? Verb. Again, what's it translate as? Guide us to the straight path. Why has He used a verb? And you say, I'm already guided, I'm a Muslim. Constantly we need guidance, don't we? Because verbs need to be carried out time and time again. And so the idea here is that at every moment in my life, I never know truly what I need to do. Most things in life are not certain, are they? You've got to go for it, and you make a decision. No, I'm not going to make any decision until I'm certain. You're going to have an anxiety attack, mate. Yeah, you can't function like that in life. Sometimes you just got to go with it, haven't you? And then, how do you know if you've done right or wrong? From feedback, isn't it? From either people or situation. Yeah, I realise this is working for me. That shows that was the right course of action to take. And ihd is a beautiful verb. It means to produce something forward. It's as if you're asking Allah, show me something so I know how to go forward. Like a gift. Hadiyah is a gift. Hadiyah is an offering as well. You know, at the Hajj, you give a hadiyah. It's like an offering, you know, the sacrifice of the animal. So it's as if you're asking Allah, show me something so I know where to go. Okay, and it's a verb, meaning constantly basically do this, because verbs express that a continuous action that needs to be constantly, it has to constantly reoccur. So that's why we say this in our prayer every day. And so it's very powerful, this shift from third person to second person. Allah does that all in the Quran, and it's very unique. In English, it doesn't really always work. I call them camera angle changes. Allah changes, sometimes in one verse He say we, Allah, and then He say He. You're thinking, why has He gone from we to He? Why has He gone to He to I? This is what we call tafannun in Arabic, which means, you know, in Pakistani dramas, they've got the camera angle changes, haven't they? You know, 1 minute it's dun dun dun, the other one, it's the camera's doing this. Now imagine if a Pakistani drama, the camera was fixed on one angle like this, that camera is. If it went on for about 20 minutes, what would happen to your attention? You lose it. So you need the camera angle. They're a bit abrupt in the Muslim world. Yeah, but there's a wisdom. This is, you know, when Allah shifts the person, it's like camera angle changes to grab. Oh, what's going on here? It's very powerful and it's very unique to the Quran, this style. And so Allah does that, but there's also a reason. It's not just done for dramatic impact that has a role, but also why has Allah gone from there to there? So why is he third person here? Why is he second person here? These are important questions to ask in the Quran when we're going through them. And also, why does Allah use a noun sentence here? Why has he used a verb sentence here to ask these questions? Okay, does that make sense? So I hope that's given you an appreciation of noun sentences and verb sentences. Okay, thank you very much.